Beautiful, beautiful story. Like it kept me on the edge of my seat.
Thank you.
It's just wonderful. It's like history, but you're there. Back to Dominga's story. There's a parallel between what happens to people of African descent in the United States and in Puerto Rico. Like, it's hard to find a job. I've heard about that from Black Panthers telling their stories. And I think some of that happened to Dominga. So can you elaborate a little bit more? You alluded to the fact that she can't be a reader anymore in the caña and in the tobacco industry. How hard was it for her to find a job? How long did she wait until she went to Mexico and then to Cuba?
Well, there are different. Thank you for your question, Socorro. There are multiple things happening here. Okay, first of all, she's black. She has a third-grade education. Okay, she has no training. Blanca Canales had no problem finding a job before she became involved. She comes from an upper-middle-class rural family. She has a great education. She drives a car. Nobody's questioning. But that's not Dominga's situation. Then you're talking about the 1930s, which is, if it was a depression here, it was even worse in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico was in a constant depression from the moment, actually forever. Because I studied Puerto Rico in the 19th century under Spain, and it wasn't any better, okay? From the 1840s onward, the working class in Puerto Rico were just being totally harassed and marginalized and exploited and all of those things. Which has been one of the criticisms that people have launched against Albizu, that in his effort to condemn the US, he sort of glorified the Spanish colonization. And Albizu was a great lawyer, but he's not a historian, and there wasn't that much history written at the time, so can't blame him too much. But the thing is that, going back to your question, she's black, she's poorly educated, and now she's also being persecuted by the police for daring to be against the system. So all of these things are going to work together to keep her from being able to get a job. Okay? Any other questions?
We have time for one more question.
I was wondering if you could...
Somebody's phone? Where am I class to be in a... Is that my phone? You would not be able to have it. Was there one other question? Yes.
Where do you see the island now? Would somebody like Albizu Campos be able to come about in this time and age? Or, obviously the island is going through a very tough time. And so where do you see us going now? And is someone like that even possible in this day and age?
That's a good question. It's always hard to hypothesize. I think that leaders emerge at the time that they're needed, and the type of leader that comes is also depends on the time. I think that a man like Albizu Campos today might not be saying the same things, or might not be doing it the same way. And there are individuals in Puerto Rico right now who are protesting the type of exploitation and colonialism that is going on in Puerto Rico. One of the things that some of you might not know is that Puerto Rico and Puerto Ricans resisted all types of colonization. They resisted against the Spaniards. That's why I wrote my book about El Grito de Lares in 1868. They resisted in the 1890s. They resisted all throughout the first 50 years of the United States government. This book only goes to the 1950s. And what you find is that and I explained this in the introduction of the book, is that there are different types of resistance, okay? One type of resistance was the independentistas who want to bring independence via the ballot. There are the more radical individuals like the nationalists who say we will get it by armed struggle if necessary. And then there are the diplomats, the ones, the negotiators, who would like to make change, but they do it gradually, and that is the people who are now represented in the Partido Popular Democrático. So these are different types of resistance, but they're resistance nonetheless. And so the group that is going to get its way in the 1890s is going to be the autonomists, which are going to bring autonomy to Puerto Rico from Spain in 1897. And then, incredibly enough, the son of the man who gets that negotiated autonomy, who was Luis Muñoz Rivera, his son Luis Muñoz Rivera, Marín, gets something similar from the United States Congress in 1952. The question is that when you negotiate, you also have to agree to compromise. And the compromise sometimes is not, when you're negotiating with a power like the United States that just won a war against Germany and Japan, it's a miracle that he got what he got in 1952. So, you know, you have to look at history in its moment and who are the leaders and why. So that's the best I can explain. Question Ingrid told me. Can you come closer, Justino, because I can't hear you.
I get a little perturbed sometimes because I know a lot of people in my family
Excuse me, I can't hear you.
that were followers of.
Why don't you start?
I can't hear you.
Hello?
Thank you.
That was
I just want to be fair to your question.
a lot of folks I've met in my family and friends that followed Don Pedro.
Yes.
And when the fear of the colonizers came upon them, they were no longer followers of Don Pedro.
That
So
happened.
that many years later they might say, it's almost Orwellian.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going through now. And I like the fact that you're talking about our heroines, and I'm glad that other Puerto Ricans are talking about the way things are. It's not that things are bad in Puerto Rico, it's that the colonizers have made things bad in Puerto Rico. Don Pedro wanted to negotiate. He was in a party. He did not say, let's take up arms against the gringos. He says, let's negotiate. And that's what he did for the sugarcane workers. And when they got a raise, the people up in Washington said, oh, we got to take care of this guy. And we were actually a training camp for what would happen in Latin America for the next 50 years.
So what's your question?
My question is that we have to think about, we have to think more clearly and without the interference of the thinking of those who colonized us and continue to colonize us. Do you think that should be it? How do we get that clear frame of mind?
Okay, I wanted to, can you hear me back there? Yes. Okay, okay. You brought out a very interesting point that I didn't have time to present it here because I have only 20 minutes to do my presentation and I have to choose. Don Pedro actually negotiated, not so much with the United States, he negotiated with the UN. And he got the post of observer for his party between 1947 and 1950 at the UN. It was right at, and the person who represented him at the UN is very interesting, was a woman called Thelma Milky. And Thelma Milky was a pacifist, friend of Ruth Mary Reynolds, who had lived in an ashram in Harlem. And she becomes really the spokesperson for the Puerto Rican Nationalist Party in Geneva, in Paris, and in all of these different places. it is when the United States signs, the United States Congress and the President of the United States sign Public Law 600, which is the law that is going to grant Puerto Rico the right to draw up its own constitution, that Don Pedro Albizu Campos realized that this is a charade, that this is not going anywhere. And he then gives the order for the attack. And it is the attack then that leads the United States to pressure the General Assembly to eliminate the post of observer for the Nationalist Party. So there was an attempt on the part of the Nationalists to do this, to resolve this problem through diplomatic means, but it didn't work.
We're going to give her a chance to sit for a little bit. I want to express my personal thanks, and can you hear me okay? Yeah. My personal thanks and everybody's gratitude to Olga for her immense contribution to the history of Puerto Rico. I was born and grew up in Puerto Rico, and it wasn't until the 6th or 7th grade that I had my very first History of Puerto Rico course. By that time, I already knew about Abraham Lincoln and the log cabin and Washington, George Washington and the Cherry Creek and all that, which is wonderful. But it's interesting how that happened. So Olga has actually filled in a vacuum in the history of Puerto Rico, and this is an incredible contribution too. So thank you, Olga, for all your work. Olga spent several years doing research, as he said, in el Archivo General de Puerto Rico, in Puerto Rico's National Archive, in order to be able to get the information that she needed to be able to write her book. And a book that rescues and preserves the stories of these courageous women. We here at the NJHRIC want to make sure that the history of Latinos in New Jersey is also properly documented and recorded for future generations. So before we close, and we have 2 more items before we close, and at that point you will have a chance to speak with Dr. Wagenheim, purchase the book and have her sign it. So before we close, let me bring our archivist, Yesenia Lopez, to the podium. I think she wants to issue a challenge to all of you.